You're obviously aware, obviously, that we've got another statue identical to this in Virginia. The difference is that one's actually at this height, so they can actually stand and shake her hand, so the hand is all shiny and...
And I'm sure you've read the mystery element of we don't know where on this site Pocahontas is.
Why is Pocahontas here?
Well, Pocahontas is here because she is buried here, that is for sure. She enjoyed Gravesend so much that she's been here since 1617, and I don't mean 4:15. So she's been here a long, long time.
The recent Disney film has so kind of overwritten things that I don't even know what the myth is.
If you want to watch the Disney video, don't expect to learn anything, like skunks and other animals speaking perfect English and John Smith being a blue-eyed, blonde-haired, all-American hero. So Pocahontas was an Algonquin Indian. Algonquin means that she spoke the Algonquin language. Funny enough, skunk happens to be one of the words in the English language that comes from Algonquin. So does, I think, toboggan. And there are probably several. I mean, we're talking about maybe 20 or 30 words that we use, the origins of which are Algonquin Indian. Her father, whose title was Powhatan, was in charge of a vast confederation of Algonquin-speaking Native American, Red Indian, whichever, because I've asked them about this, they don't mind being called either of those, but Native American tribes in what we would now understand as Virginia. John Smith was the man who came over from England with 3 ships. Amazing, it was a miracle really that he ever got there. He could have been lost in storms, they could have all died of disease, they could have been attacked by Spanish or the French or anybody else, because this country was more or less at war with everybody at the same time. But amazingly, they got to the West Indies and then on to Virginia, and they weren't there for their holidays. They were there to make money, understandably, and to create the origins of what became the British Empire. That's obviously not in their mind at the time. What they were really interested in, well, I've just had 3 ships coming over. It's cost me an awful lot of money. I need to recoup and make a profit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grow tobacco. And when you consider that tobacco was the main crop grown in Virginia, as far as I believe and am told, up until the 1990s, quite extraordinary.
You seem to be implying that it was somewhat developed by the time they arrived. It wasn't
developed at all. Not by the white man. Not by the white man. Yeah. The English often call her Princess Pocahontas. Now, I've been to Virginia many times and I've spoken to Algonquin Indians, and they've assured me there is not such a thing in their culture as a princess, which is just really handy to know, because Powhatan, her father, collected children and wives like other people collect stamps. And so there was no inheritance that automatically she was the daughter or the son, that the kingdom would be passed on.
So they may not even have been biological relatives.
Oh, no, I think they were biological. I'm pretty sure they were, as far as we know. We don't know, do we? Yeah. But we think so. We think so. Pocahontas, or Matoka, another one of her names, means mischievous or nosy, intelligent, always into things. John Smith tells us the story, the famous story, that he was captured by these savages and was going to have his brains beaten out when this young slip of a girl threw herself across him and persuaded her father to save his life. Unfortunately, John Smith seems to have repeated stories of a similar vein in various other locations around the world. So whether he made them up from that original one, or there was another original one from which that was made up, we don't know.
So John Smith is the sole source of this stuff.
John Smith is the sole source.
And I guess the Algonquins at the time weren't writing anything down.
No,
so, yeah.
no, completely oral traditions. So give you some context. St. Jamestown, the original and first successful English settlement, not the first settlement, but the first successful, only successful by the skin of its teeth, was 1607. So this presumably happened in 1607 or 1608, early. Yeah. There is another rather more unpleasant story that, in fact, John Smith was in the woods. The Algonquin Indians attacked him and the English soldiers, killed them, and castrated him, and sent him back to Jamestown, saying, "This is what we're going to do to you." Now, which that would that would account for something. The fact he never got married, he never had any children, a very high squeaky voice, and had a very strange gait when he walked. But he says, John Smith says, he had to be sent back to England because he'd had an injury by gunpowder apparently exploding in his trousers pocket. Ruined the zip. And the trouble is that why would a professional soldier have gunpowder in his pocket, which blew his trousers off? I mean, and perhaps some other bits and pieces.
Schoolboy error.
Yeah, absolute schoolboy error. So I don't think it occurred. But maybe the castration is true. We don't know. It's all, so much of it is there's a germ of truth, and the rest of it, a bit like Robin of Sherwood or Wat Tyler of Kent, surrounded by legend and stories, and it's almost impossible to pick one from the other because we just don't know.
But we know she came here, so...
She most definitely came here.
Did she come here with John Smith, or...?
No. That's another popular misconception, that people think she married John Smith. She didn't. She married a man called John Rolfe. She was kidnapped by Captain Samuel Argall. There's a name for you. Captain Argall from East Sutton in Kent. He really inveigled her to come on board. She met John Rolfe on board ship, who was a widower. He was also a tobacco grower, originally from Bermuda, but had now come on to the mainland in Virginia. And she married him, but she had to give up everything, which is why, whether it was a true love story or not, we cannot possibly tell. But put it this way, she had to change her name to Rebecca Rolfe. She had to wear white man's clothing, learn another language, change her religion, change her food.
And imagine, a suitably motivated someone who doesn't want to live in the Indian village anymore and wants to go on those ships. How exciting!
I would suggest that's a typical English gloss on it, and you may be right. We're never going to know, are we?
Yeah.
She's not going to come down from the plinth and where you can interview her. Anyway, she came to this country in 1616. She was brought here by her husband to be a three-dimensional walking, talking, living advert for growing tobacco and investing in the Virginia Company. She was taken to court where apparently, we're told, she met the king. But we think that's highly unlikely because James I, who had been James VI of Scotland, couldn't bear tobacco or anybody that smoked it. So he wasn't there.
Possibly
but she met the Queen.
Yeah.
She didn't like London. She said it stank. I think she probably still does. Also, her father sent with her an important man in the tribe, and he was given a big long stick. And Powhatan said to him, "Every time you see a white man, you cut a nick in the stick." So we know how many of the buggers there are. But unfortunately, by the time he landed at Plymouth, he'd run out of stick. It was all just nick. And she picked up something. We do not know what the disease was. It could have been anything. Could have been smallpox, could have been consumption. I don't know. Nobody really knows. And we're not going to ever find out because we haven't found her body.
Was it? I mean, it's before 1666, so it's plague times, almost.
Yes, it could have been the plague. Yeah. It could have been the plague. We just don't know. So it was on the homeward journey back to America in 1617. So she was on board the ship with her husband, John Rolfe. By the time she got to Gravesend, she was seriously ill. Again, what we do not know is, did she come ashore and die, or was she dead on board ship and they brought her ashore? She had to be buried, and she was buried here.
The burial records say the chancel.
Yes, the
But
burial.
then
the burial.
we had the fire, didn't we?
Exactly. My money's on St George's Church. The only certainty is she's here
Somewhere here.
somewhere.
Somewhere here.
That's all we know, and that's all we can really possibly know. Yeah. So the statue was unveiled in 1958 by Governor Battle of Virginia. It was a big event, and as you can see, the churchyard almost has no gravestones in it at all. They're all along the edge.
So the bodies will all move?
No,
do we know
no, the bodies are still
So
there.
just
Yes.
the gravestones are
Yes.
moved?
Yes, just the gravestones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's...
But I've
so-
heard the story that when the fire happened on the original build, some of the burials may well have got moved to another part of the site. It's
possible.
So although the chancel, it says that's where she's buried, she could have been moved. I like Christoph, think she is still under the chancel and it would have been built on top.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing we don't know. Does this building, occupy the same
Same
footprint
space, yeah.
of the earlier St George's. But we don't know. Her son, or their son, Thomas, stayed in this country with relatives, and remarkably, he survived to marry and have children of his own. His children married into the Bowling family, and they were very successful at breeding. So to such an extent that you've now got all sorts of people claiming to be direct descendants of Pocahontas.
And we have a special service round the statue every March, March the 21st, because we don't know the actual date of death, but March the 21st was the date of the funeral.
1923, American, and I think they were led by a British, but now living in America, anthropologists, and they came over to find Pocahontas and take her home. Did you like the American accent there? Well,
Keep working on that, Christoph. Yeah.
Lord Curzon, the Foreign Secretary of Britain at the time, was saying it was the work of a load of ghouls. It was a complete PR disaster. They were digging up almost willy-nilly tombs, measuring skulls.
Surely can't be allowed to just dig up.
And
Well,
that's the thing now.
Canon Gedge, who was the rector then,
Yeah.
said that they could, and amazingly, a miracle happened. For the bells that had not been rung for many years previously were suddenly in working order as a result of this visit. Money, I'm sure. Anyway, the point is, what did they find? No Pocahontas.
Nothing
Well,
that you could...
there was no
What could you
DNA
say?
in 1923. How could you ever prove it was her?
But we get messages through our website often of, send her back. What are you doing? As though we're to blame, but you can't go digging up other people's graves looking.
No.
We'd be digging up the whole site.
And
so
you
we
still
can't.
probably wouldn't find
No.
her.
You want to see as well as Pocahontas' baptism.
Let's do that one.
When was this dedicated again, Christoph? Can you remember?
Yes, 1914, just before the First World War, and the same was true for the opposite window. This is Rebecca, which of course was Pocahontas' anglicised name. She became Rebecca. And the other one is to Ruth, and you'll know more about this than me, the lady that went with her mother-in-law from Moab into Israel, like a lady being dedicated to somebody so much that they went into a foreign land, as indeed Pocahontas did.
It says Rebecca on the top, so this is why now I understand why you were saying Rebecca.
That would have been her Christian name. She was baptised obviously in Virginia, in Jamestown. And these two windows, that one and that one, were given by the colonial dames of Virginia in 1914, before the First World War broke out. Yeah.
And here's the commemoration stone that we mentioned outside.
For Pocahontas.
So
Yeah.
when people come in expressing an interest of Pocahontas, this is the area to send them to, because like I say, it's in the burial records, it's the chancel where she was buried, so hence we have this.
So this is at least where you'd like
That's,
to think she's buried. Yeah,
if the church was built like for like over, I'm pretty certain therefore she would be under this part of the church.
Yeah.
But like I say, some stories say lots of bones got removed to another area.
They used to have a World Cup of all the states that were in the Bible. So Moab versus Edom, and
you did top
Israel
trumps.
versus... Yeah, that's what I mean.
Actually, I think there is some Bible top trumps now, actually, you could get. Yeah, that's right.